Reputations don't die slowly. They vanish in an instant. One headline, one accusation, one whisper that catches fire, and suddenly the world sees you differently. Have you ever noticed how quickly it happens? One moment, you're trusted. The next, you're untouchable. That's how it began for him. An ordinary morning. Coffee still steaming in the cup when his phone lit up. Dozens of messages from friends, colleagues, even people he hadn't heard from in years. All carrying that same unspoken mix of pity and curiosity. Something had happened. By the time he clicked the first link, the story had already escaped his control. His name was there, bold in the headline. The accusation, sharper and heavier than any truth could ever be. Within hours, whispers became a roar. Strangers picked apart his life like it was public property. At work, eyes darted away. Smiles tightened into suspicion. He hadn't been tried in a court of law. He had been tried in the court of perception. And in that courtroom, speed will always outrun evidence. If you've ever watched a reputation unravel, you know the stages. First, the shock. Then, the desperate urge to explain, to defend, to convince people the story isn't what it seems. But here's the truth most never see coming. That instinct, it's the trap. Because the moment you rush to defend yourself, you step into the frame your accusers built for you. And that frame is designed to break you. Before we go any further, stay with me. Because what we're about to unpack could be the difference between surviving an accusation and being destroyed by it. We'll break down the psychological traps most people fall into, the exact move Machiavelli warned you never to make, and the strategies that can turn a public attack into your moment of strength. By the end of this video, you'll know how to take control of the narrative, disarm your accusers, and walk away with more influence than you started with. Niccolo Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. Living in the cutthroat politics of Renaissance Florence, he saw how power wasn't always lost through failure. It was often lost in the split-second reactions after an attack. The wrong move after an accusation could destroy you faster than the accusation itself. What we're about to explore is uncomfortable. Why anger, retreat, or over-explaining signal weakness? Why those who remain calm, unshaken even in the storm, so often survive? And the single thing you must never do when the world turns on you. This isn't just about history, it's about now, about you, about the day you may find yourself accused, and the choice you'll face, fall or endure. Niccolo Machiavelli's name has become shorthand for cold-blooded manipulation. A schemer, a cynic, the man who taught the world that the ends justify the means. Yet the truth is more complex and far more human. Machiavelli was born into Renaissance Florence, a city of splendor and shadows. Art and philosophy flourished under the Medici, but behind the marble facades lay a world of fragile alliances, betrayals, and sudden reversals of fortune. Power changed hands not just through war, but through whispers. A single rumor, if well placed, could end a career faster than a sword. Machiavelli served as a senior diplomat and advisor in this volatile arena. He negotiated with kings, faced down mercenaries, and navigated the dangerous currents of Florentine politics. But in 1512, the Medici family returned to power after years of exile. In the reshuffling that followed, Machiavelli was accused of conspiring against them. There was no trial in the way we imagine it, only imprisonment, torture, and humiliation. He had seen how accusation worked from the outside. Now he would live it from within. These experiences would shape his most famous works, The Prince and the Discourses. Beneath their reputation for ruthlessness lies something more subtle: survival strategies. A recognition that in politics and in life, the accusation is rarely about truth. It's about leverage. Machiavelli understood something many forget. When you're accused, your reaction matters more than the accusation itself. Emotional outbursts, frantic self-defense, or public displays of vulnerability are not cathartic. They are gifts to your enemies. They turn you into exactly what the accusation needs you to be: desperate, unstable, and easy to discredit. In his world, emotion wasn't a weakness because it was irrational. It was a weakness because it was predictable. And predictability can be weaponized. He learned the hard way that when the tide turns against you, the worst thing you can do is play the role your enemies have scripted for you. His advice, drawn from betrayal and blood, still echoes in the corridors of power today. And as we'll see, it applies just as much to the digital age as it did to the courts of Renaissance Florence. In the modern world, an accusation doesn't have to be proven to destroy you. It only has to be believed long enough for the damage to stick. The moment a seed of doubt is planted, it begins to grow. Not in the soil of facts, but in the collective mind of an audience primed to react before thinking. Social media accelerates this process into hyperspeed. You don't get days or weeks to respond. You get minutes. By the time you speak, opinions have already hardened. Psychology has a name for this: the illusory truth effect. The more something is repeated, the more believable it feels, even without evidence. Couple that with the negativity bias, our brain's tendency to latch onto negative information more than positive, and you have the perfect storm. Lies spread quickly, but accusations, true or false, spread faster than almost anything else. We see it every week. A viral tweet accusing someone of misconduct, a leaked video taken out of context, a headline carefully worded to imply guilt without stating it outright. Sometimes the accused is guilty, sometimes they're not. But the trial begins before the facts are in. Take the fictional case of a tech CEO accused of exploiting workers. The story hits at 8 a.m. By noon, hashtags are trending. By evening, investors are pulling out. In desperation, the CEO makes a shaky live stream statement, angrily defending himself and attacking his accusers. The clip is chopped, memed, and turned into the very proof people were looking for. His downfall isn't sealed by the accusation, it's sealed by his reaction. Machiavelli understood this dynamic long before Twitter. In his time, the court of public perception was a literal court. Crowds, whispers, and rumors that traveled through markets and palaces. Today, the venue has changed, but the rules remain. Once accused, you are not operating in a court of law. You are standing trial in the public square, where truth competes with narrative, and narrative usually wins. The question is no longer, did you do it? The question becomes, how do you look while being accused? The most dangerous mistake you can make after being accused is to start acting like the accused. The moment you position yourself as someone defending against a charge, you've already stepped into the frame your enemy built for you. You're no longer leading the narrative, you're trapped inside it. You become the defendant in the court of public perception, and in that court, the jury is infinite, faceless, and impossible to satisfy. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He saw that the accused who scrambles to explain themselves, who pleads for understanding, who bends over backwards to prove innocence, rarely survives politically. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. When you over-explain, you appear guilty. When you plead, you appear weak. When you show desperation, you confirm that the accusation has the power to destabilize you. In psychology, this is tied to our subconscious bias toward strength. Humans are wired to gravitate toward confidence and authority, even when it's morally questionable, and to recoil from visible vulnerability in high-stakes situations. A leader under fire who remains unshaken communicates one thing: I'm still in control. That perception alone can be enough to blunt the attack. History is littered with examples. In 1984, British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher faced massive political criticism over the miners' strike and accusations of authoritarianism. She didn't apologize or soften her stance. She doubled down on her convictions, projecting unwavering certainty, and her position held. Contrast that with the collapse of former U.S. Senator Gary Hart in 1987, accused of infidelity. Instead of controlling the frame, he invited reporters to follow him around to prove his innocence. They did, and the resulting photographs destroyed him. Modern CEOs have learned this the hard way. When Elon Musk faced SEC charges in 2018, his public posture was not that of a man on trial. He continued posting bold company announcements and reframing the media's focus onto Tesla's innovations. The accusation didn't vanish, but it didn't define him. The pattern is clear. Those who survive public accusations don't merely defend, they redefine. They project the image of someone too focused on leading to be distracted by noise. Those who crumble are the ones who make the accusation the center of their identity. Machiavelli's lesson is sharp and unflinching. The instant you play the role of the accused, you've already surrendered the most important weapon you have, your authority. The public rarely forgives weakness, but it often forgets an accusation if the accused refuses to look like one. When the storm hits, survival belongs to the one who takes back the initiative. Machiavelli's answer to accusation was never passive. You don't simply weather the blows, you dictate the rhythm of the fight, you crush the threat outright, or you act in a way that renders it irrelevant. Anything less is slow political death. The first move is seize the initiative. That means doing something so bold, so unexpected, that the accusation is forced into the background. A scandal loses oxygen when there's something bigger, more urgent, and more compelling to talk about. In the 49th BCE political chaos of Rome, Julius Caesar was accused of treason for defying the Senate. Instead of pleading for forgiveness, he crossed the Rubicon with his army, a direct act of war. The accusation became irrelevant because the game itself had changed. He wasn't defending his innocence, he was reshaping the battlefield. The second is framing the accuser, not through clumsy counterattacks, but by planting the seed that their motives are tainted. When Franklin D. Roosevelt faced whispers of corruption during the New Deal, he didn't spend months proving the rumors false. He reframed his critics as enemies of progress, people terrified of change because it threatened their power. By shifting suspicion toward their intent, he turned their accusations into evidence of their fear. The third is reasserting dominance. This is done through action, not argument. You demonstrate that you are still in control, still moving forward, still leading. In the corporate world, Steve Jobs was ousted from Apple in 1985 amid criticisms of his leadership. Years later, when facing skepticism about his return, he didn't defend his past. He unveiled the iMac. The product launch drowned out doubts. People didn't want an explanation. They wanted proof he could still win. History rewards those who use the attack as fuel. In some cases, an accusation has even been turned into a rallying cry, transforming vulnerability into power. Political leaders under siege have rallied their followers by portraying themselves as underdogs, fighting against an unjust enemy. Suddenly, the accusation is no longer about the alleged crime. It's about loyalty, unity, and survival. The psychology is simple. In moments of accusation, people subconsciously seek someone who still looks like a leader. Not someone explaining their way out of trouble, but someone advancing, deciding, commanding. Machiavelli's wisdom is as relevant in boardrooms and personal disputes as it was in Renaissance courts. In the face of accusation, you don't wait for the tide to turn. You move first, hit harder, and force the world to speak your language, not theirs. Human beings are not purely rational creatures. We like to think we weigh evidence, analyze facts, and make fair judgments. But in reality, perception often matters more than truth. This is why Machiavelli's strategies for surviving accusation are so enduring. They align not with ideals of fairness, but with the actual mechanics of human psychology. Authority bias plays a central role. People instinctively trust those who appear confident, even when evidence is scarce. It's a survival instinct. Our ancestors survived by following those who seemed sure of the path, not those who hesitated at every step. In moments of accusation, your composure becomes a form of silent evidence. Calm authority suggests, I know the truth and it's on my side. Desperation suggests the opposite. There's also the matter of impression management. Humans are constantly sending and reading subtle social signals, posture, tone, pacing of speech. In the court of public perception, these signals often outweigh the actual content of your defense. A person who reframes the accusation while keeping their focus on future action appears in control. A person who reacts frantically appears trapped. Machiavelli understood this from experience. He knew that allies and supporters are not bound to you by unshakable loyalty. They are bound by belief in your ability to lead. The moment you look like someone on the verge of collapse, you give them psychological permission to step away. Power doesn't erode instantly. It's abandoned when those around you believe it's safer to distance themselves. This dynamic plays out in small-scale, everyday life. Imagine a workplace where a manager is accused of mishandling a project. One manager spends weeks in defensive meetings, over-explaining to every colleague, visibly stressed. Another acknowledges the concern briefly, then immediately shifts focus to leading the next major initiative with confidence. Which one looks like a leader worth following? Or in a friend group where a rumor spreads? The person who carries themselves as if nothing fundamental has changed often retains their place. The one who scrambles to fix their image usually confirms a suspicion. The truth is simple and unsettling. When accused, the reaction matters more than the accusation. Confidence, even in uncertainty, draws people in. Weakness, even when innocent, pushes them away. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago, and it remains just as lethal or liberating today. In Machiavelli's time, the crowd gathered in the streets, the marketplace, or the court. Today, the crowd lives in your pocket. It doesn't sleep, it doesn't wait for context. It's global, instant, and merciless. The moment an accusation lands online, you are not just dealing with public opinion, you are dealing with algorithms. Platforms are built to amplify what provokes the strongest reaction, and nothing fuels engagement like outrage. Emotion outpaces nuance. Indignation spreads faster than explanation. A few words, a short clip, a screenshot. These can become the definitive version of you in the eyes of millions before you've even taken your next breath. Here, Machiavelli's insights become chillingly relevant. He understood that when the crowd turns, reason rarely brings them back. In the digital age, the temptation to set the record straight can be fatal to your reputation. By responding reactively, you feed the very machine that's consuming you. Every defensive post, every late-night rebuttal, becomes fresh content for the outrage cycle. Survival demands strategy, not catharsis. Sometimes strategic silence is more powerful than frantic explanation. Other times, reframing the narrative, shifting the conversation to something bigger than the accusation, can pull focus away from the firestorm. The key is to act with precision, not emotion. Consider the case of a public figure whose name trended worldwide after a damaging claim. Instead of diving into the mud, they released no direct rebuttal. Instead, within days, they announced a bold, unrelated initiative, something that spoke to leadership and vision. While critics kept shouting, supporters now had a different story to rally around. The outrage didn't vanish, but the momentum shifted. This is the digital court Machiavelli never lived to see, but would have understood instantly. The crowd wants a spectacle. The algorithm rewards the spectacle. If you can't control the fire, you can control where the light falls. In a world that decides quickly and forgets slowly, the question is not whether you can clear your name, it's whether you can remain someone worth following while the storm rages. In the 16th century, the crowd was a physical presence, faces in a square, voices echoing through narrow streets. Today, the crowd is everywhere. It's invisible, faceless, and yet it's watching you in real time. One moment you're living your life, the next, your name is trending worldwide for reasons you may not even understand. An accusation online doesn't simply live in the realm of opinion. It becomes fuel for algorithms designed to amplify whatever triggers the strongest emotional reaction. Outrage isn't an accident, it's a feature. Platforms profit from your humiliation because anger keeps people scrolling, commenting, and sharing. And in this new arena, speed beats truth every time. Machiavelli never lived in a world of hashtags and viral clips, but his principles fit it perfectly. He knew that once the mob has a narrative, fighting it head-on often makes it stronger. In the age of social media, this is doubly true. Every post defending yourself, every emotional live stream, every "let me explain" becomes new content for the outrage machine. You're not setting the record straight. You're feeding the spectacle. The first survival strategy is restraint. Strategic silence can be unnerving to your critics. Without your reaction to latch onto, the outrage often burns itself out faster. The second is redirection. Launch something bold, unexpected, and unrelated to the accusation. Give the crowd and the algorithm something else to talk about. Shift the frame so the accusation is no longer the center of your identity. One public figure accused of misconduct understood this perfectly. While the internet waited for a defensive statement, they instead announced a major philanthropic project. Headlines shifted. Supporters rallied. The scandal didn't vanish, but the story's center of gravity changed. The temptation to clear your name is almost irresistible. But Machiavelli would warn, when the audience has already decided, explanations won't save you. Perception is the battlefield now, and if you can't erase the storm, you can still decide how you'll stand in it. Accusations are not rare events reserved for the corrupt or the careless. If you live long enough with any measure of influence, ambition, or even the courage to stand for something, the day will come when a shadow is cast on your name. It will arrive without warning. Sometimes it will be deserved, sometimes it will be a fabrication. Either way, the outcome will not be determined solely by truth. It will be determined by what you do next. Machiavelli's lesson was never a call for dishonesty as a way of life. It was a warning about the world's true operating system, a system where perception outruns fact, where survival depends less on what you've done and more on how you stand when the arrows come. Never let your enemies choose the ground on which you fight. When that day arrives, you will be tempted to panic, to explain, to defend. When that day arrives, you will be tempted to panic, to explain, to defend. But the real question, the only question, is whether you will crumble under the weight of their story or take control of the narrative and make it your own. Machiavelli knew it centuries ago. The battle is rarely won by proving the truth, but by mastering perception. So the next time you're challenged, remember, never let your enemies choose the ground on which you fight. Subscribe for more deep dives into the psychology of power and survival. Drop a comment with your thoughts or your own story of overcoming an accusation. I read every single one, and share this with someone who needs to hear it right now, because sometimes knowing what not to do is the most powerful weapon you can have.